I now call this meeting of the School Board of Independent School District 624 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thompson.
Here.
Arcan.
Here.
Daniels here. Ellison.
Here.
Scar.
Here.
All right, so for the first thing on the agenda for discussion items, B1, Birch Lake Elementary update. Dr. K and Julian Stanky.
Yeah, Julian, just come on up and get rolling. Thank you for being here and providing an update.
All right, good evening. Members of the board, thank you for having me. I'm Julian Stanky and I'm the proud principal of Birch Lake Elementary. Tonight I've got some updates for you, just a little bit of background about Birch. We'll go through just a little overview of who we are, a little reflection on how we ended the year last year, and then some things that have been moving us forward here as we've started the year this year for 25-26. So. All right, a little bit of a breakdown of who we are at Birch Lake. So we are one of our Title I school programs at Birch Lake. We're approximately 15% ML students, about 31% special services, so receiving some form of support through their IEPs, 504s, and so on. And then about 53% free and reduced, and approximately 1% homeless highly mobile. That number is a little bit, it changes throughout the year a little bit. And then one of the other big pieces for numbers wise is just our team. This year we're up to 73 staff members total that work in and around Birch Lake. And more each year it's been that their home base is Birch Lake, which has been a really great thing to see that growth with our school. This year we're at, I have 244 on here, but I double checked our enrollment this morning. It's actually 246. So that's our 3-year high for student enrollment. So just since about August 18th, we had just over 30 students enroll at Birch, and they're representative of a variety of places around, not just Minnesota, but across the country and around the world of students that we're having come into Birch Lake. So that's been super exciting for us as our community has grown. And I'll circle back to that a little bit towards the end of the presentation. Other programs that I just wanted to highlight that we have that are doing really well at Birch Lake this year, we've been working for our 3rd year now with Educators Thriving. That's been something we've done at the district level, but also at the Birch Lake building level. And we opened the year with them, and it was a fantastic experience during our opening days to do a strength assessment as we developed. Since I arrived 3 years ago, of our teams, we only have one team that's been together more than 3 years. So it was a really great opportunity to collaborate with them and focus on our strengths as teams and where we want to focus on as we get underway with this year in supporting our students. So. The other piece of growth with that is that we have 2 sections now at every grade level, kindergarten through 5th grade, which has been super exciting. And we also host 2 sections of early childhood in our building. You'll see a long list there of organizations that we collaborate with throughout the year. 2 that I do want to highlight, though, because they are coming up quickly. First is the YMCA. We start with our 2nd grade swimming unit here early October, and that same week our 5th graders will be going up to Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center in Finland, Minnesota. So that's a super exciting thing, and it'll be a really fun and busy week for us at Birch. So some highlights from last year that I wanted to share with you all. We met 2 of our 3 goals at the end of last year, which was really exciting for us. We really focused in on our ML student population, as that is a population that has grown. So our multilingual learners, and that's grown a lot in the last 3 years. Like I said, we're up over 15% now this year, and that continues to increase. Our A Math and CBMR risk decreased in all assessed grade levels, so that was super exciting. So that you'll see on the next couple slides here, we have our early reading assessment for our K1, and then we also have our CBMRs for our 2 through 5, all which saw increases, and we continue to grow with that. So while we're celebrating, we're also seeing that we want to continue that growth in the projection that we have. We're also focusing heavily on our Tier 2 and Tier 3 implementation this year, really locking in what our instruction looks like, especially during our what I need, our win times. And then finally, our building culture has just continued to grow, and that'll be highlighted towards the end, and our attendance rates are up and up. We're averaging upwards of 90% of daily attendance, which is exciting. That also means, though, we still have 10 to 12% of students that we really want to focus in on and making sure that the supports that they need are available to them to get them to school. So there was just a quick overview of those scores. Again, like I said, from the early reading and our CBMRs from last fall to winter and then ending up in the spring. And then here's our attendance data. And so, like I said, we've got a lot of green, which feels good, but it's really focusing in on that red and yellow for that final 10-ish% on average per grade level to see what it is those students are needing to get them consistently attending school. So as we move forward and our area of focuses will continue to be our academic goals and how we make sure that our instruction is unified and that we are being consistent with our interventions and our supports and our direct instruction. That photo there is our new staff photo of the year. I've gotten a collection going now every year at that Birch Lake sign, which is beautiful. But that was brand new the first year I got here, and so now every year we get at least one a year, right around there. Here's our new goals for 25-26. So looking at, first of all, for our first through fifth graders at 65%, we'll score low risk on the FastBridge CBMRs. And then that 63% of our second through fifth grade ML students, so our multilingual learners, will score low risk in the FastBridge A reading assessment. And then for our student experience, again, like I said, we're focusing on bringing up that attendance from that 88%-ish all the way up to 90 or higher. And we do feel that that is a very attainable goal as we start to look at our supports and ways in which our staff is collaborating to get our students to school. So a few things, I talked a little bit earlier about our building growth and our community development. These are a few of our major things that have happened just in the past few months that have really helped in that area. So I spoke a little bit about our enrollment gains at our 3-year high. We also expanded our Cubs program. So our Cubs program supports students in the community with some of our highest medical needs, their developmental and cognitive delays, high-level autism, and we added a third section to our building this year. So our Cubs program now has 3 full sections of Cubs with 3 paras per teacher, and it has been incredible. We've built some really great relationships with our families and the students in that program. And then I'm going to jump over to the third point on here, and that's our new playground. That playground is super exciting. It is super accessible for all students, whether you're fully physically able or you have impairments. You can get to at least 80% of our playground with the ramps that were installed. There's all sorts of interactive pieces to that. And I'll show you some more photos of that in just a little bit. But that was installed in August. They took it out in 2 weeks and had the new one in about a week after that. And the whole community has been so excited about that. As a neighborhood school, Birch Lake is a gathering place for families, not just during the day, but even after school gets out. And so it's been a really great place for our families to be able to come and spend some of this great time outdoors. And then we had a ribbon cutting ceremony back on September 12th. Thank you to Board Member Arcan and Dr. K for being there. We had a great turnout for that too, and we collaborated with our Chamber of Commerce to have a full ribbon cutting ceremony where they brought me an extremely large sharp scissors to cut the red ribbon with, and it was a blast. Carboni's helped out with and collaborated with our PTA so that all of our families could be fed. So we had some pizza and salad there. And then we had our PTA sponsored Bounce Back to School night that same night. And if you remember, that Friday was pouring rain by about 7 o'clock. So we did close up a little early, but it didn't slow anyone down to celebrate the great happenings at Birch. And then finally, our continued partnerships within the community here. North Homes, we have a new CTSS worker and a new in-house therapist that we're sharing with Lincoln Elementary too, which has been super exciting. And like I said, our collaboration with PTA and the Chamber of Commerce already this fall has been super encouraging to bring our community together. So here's just a few highlights of our ribbon cutting ceremony from the 12th. And just a couple overview photos of this beautiful new playground. So if you really like the color scheme, you can thank the students at Birch Lake because they picked that out for us too. So we have a lot of great exciting things happening at Birch, and we're super excited to have the 25-26 school year underway. And I'll open up for any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just wondering about the slide that talked about 65%, the goals, 65% 1 through 5 for all students, and then 2 through 5. Where are the first graders for the ML? We don't measure that. I mean, it's, I don't know if my question's very clear. So if you go back to your slide that talks about your goals, it says 1 through 5 will get 65% low risk. And then for ML students, it's 2 through 5. So I'm just wondering where the first graders, the ML students, first graders are.
Yeah, so it depends based on the assessments that we're using for each student group. So the FastBridge CBMR, that is only given to our 2nd through 5th grade students.
Okay.
That's not something that we have for our kindergarten first
So,
grade.
yeah.
That's why they're not included in that measurement.
Okay, but the all school is included
Correct.
for first. Okay,
Yes.
that answers my
Yeah.
question. Thanks a lot.
Yes, Mr. Scar.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. On that one slide where you had, I think it was slide 6, the demographic one. So you're saying there's 244 students?
Well, we're up to 246, but yeah, 244 was when I was creating the slideshow where we were at, yeah.
And then 73 staff.
Yes.
So that basically, if you do the ratio, it's 3.3 students per staff. How many teachers are there?
So licensed general ed classroom teachers, we have 12. And then we have 5 special ed teachers. We have 3 traveling specialists, so music, art, and phy ed. And then we have 2 intervention teachers that are both full-time.
So if I get my math right, so that's 12, 2 is 14, plus 5 is 19, so plus 3 is 22. So you're saying out of the 73 staff people, 22, that's like less than a third?
We have a total of about 39 that are licensed staff, so that does include our social worker, our school psych, our OT, PT, some of the folks that we have that travel between multiple buildings as well. But so
Okay.
39 are licensed, so the non-licensed staff members would be everyone from our paraprofessionals to our custodial staff to our health aides and so on.
So this might not be a question for you, but maybe for the administration. When you look at that ratio, it seems like when you compare the non-teacher to the teacher staff, it looks like it's way higher for the administrative staff versus teaching. Do you see what I mean? If we have 22 teaching versus in a total of 73, doesn't it seem like?
Yeah, very few of those staff members would be administrative staff, though. They'd all be the vast majority are going to be student facing, but this is everyone who interacts, at Birch. So, we're talking about after school programming, for instance. We're talking about paraprofessionals, noon supervisors, media center folks, so it's everybody regardless of how part-time or what that looks like, nutrition services, et cetera. So
Do we know what a good ratio is?
I'd say no, but I'd say the ratio would look very similar at all of our buildings. A little bit higher at Birch because it's a smaller elementary. We do have more staff members that are shared between Birch and other buildings. So that's going to bump that number up a little bit. But when you look at all of the services offered, that's what that snapshot gives you.
Do we have like benchmarking numbers related to that for an elementary school of this size? How many teachers versus how many, I call them administration, so that maybe that's not the right term, but anybody that is a non-teacher, the ratios, because that does seem like it's.
So we have benchmarking in a couple of different ways, but it also depends on the site and what kind of programming they offer. So for instance, if you're looking at a site that has the Cubs programming that Julian was talking about, that's going to mean that there's quite a few more individuals there with our setting 3 special education programming. That's what it's going to look like. Whether or not school has a robust after school and before school care program, that's going to move all of that. Where we do have benchmarking though is, yes, we make sure that those ratios are relatively consistent within all of those programming, within all of that programming.
So that 73 number, is that FTEs, full-time equivalents, or is
No.
it just, so it includes, so it's not full-time equivalents?
No, not at all.
Okay. It might.
Many of those individuals would be, for instance, 2 to 3 hour a day employees, like our noon supervisors, for instance, folks that are providing after school care, et cetera, our nutrition services employees, some of which would be full FTE, some of which would be quite part-time. You know, it really runs the gamut. And so, you know, I think as Julian put this together, he's saying these are all of the professionals that impact the school as you're looking at that number.
So I see. It's just like when you're looking at productivity or ratios where teachers versus administration or non-teachers having FTEs, full-time equivalents, would be helpful. And it's also helpful to have the total number.
Sure.
But the other one was on multilingual learners. I mean, what kind of, is that 15%, is that a high number as compared with other elementary schools? Or is it about average?
I can't speak to a
You
lot
can
of the
just
other,
guess.
but for Birch, if you look at the last 10 years to 15 years of time, that's a big growth in what our community has seen in the shift. And so it feels like a big number. And on a scale of 244, 246 kids, 15% does add up to a lot to what it brings into our community. So it's a huge piece that we are super proud of having at Birch.
So what kind of challenges does that bring to the school, having?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think sometimes, right, we had that big influx of students that enrolled in the last couple weeks of summer. And a lot of those students we had a handful that were new to country, some that were new to the state, but many of which would be receiving ML services. So just finding exactly what it is that they need for supports to make sure that they're starting the year in a really positive, strong way. It was one of the things that it's all hands on deck to help with that right away, to make sure that they are all set up for a successful school year. Aligning them with any of our social worker does a lot of work there too to help out to make sure that they have the basic necessities that they need and so on, transportation.
So it likely increases the requirements of support staff to have that higher percentage, is what you're saying. I see. You know, when you're looking at attendance, your professional opinion would be helpful on this, and maybe you guys know all this stuff and it's open really to anybody. But what's the biggest driver for improving attendance or making sure attendance is high? What do you think that is?
I think something that's challenging is that the things that get in the way sometimes for students that are having chronic absenteeism are things that are perhaps out of our control. Things that we can help with support with finding some resources through our networks here, but also there's things that we can't control in the students' home. So when we get them here, it's making sure that they have a place that they're feeling welcome and cared for and have all, the things that they need for a successful academic day. So that's I don't know if that's exactly answering your question.
Mm-hmm. No, that does.
But I think that that's one of the challenges, because there are pieces that we can definitely support, and then there's parts that are challenging beyond our control.
Right, so illness is probably is not as big of a deal as some of those other, not that you control illness, it'd be great if you could, but some of those other things, like family issues or whatever, those types of issues are probably the biggest driver, right? Gotcha.
Yeah, without having exact data, yeah, I would say that's definitely has a major impact.
All right, thank you.
Can I just make a comment
Yes,
regarding
ma'am.
your question about the number of staff?
Mhm.
And, as a former director of special services, and I'm very familiar with the CUB program, the staff ratio there is high because the students need a lot of support. So all those people are going to be counted in that staffing ratio. Some of them are there maybe, like a physical therapist, which is required by law, might be there just 2 mornings a week. They're counted in the 73. A speech and language part-time, but they're counted in the 73. We have lots of people that need to be a part of that student's education by law. So having a program like the Cubs program, which is a wonderful program and something we're very proud of, and I think you should visit sometime. We've talked about you visiting some of the programs. That would be great if you could come and see, and then that would help kind of illuminate, why staffing might seem higher in some buildings because of some of the programs and some of the supports that we are required, and the right thing to do for all of our students.
Right, I was a volunteer in that area.
Did you, at Cubs, at the Cubs program?
No,
Oh, okay.
in St. Paul public school district, so I saw firsthand
Yeah.
what's required, and I
Yeah.
know it's a lot.
Yeah,
So-
well, so I just wanted to comment on that because I know that's a big part of your program and the students are, you know, very welcome there and it's such a wonderful program, so thanks for the presentation.
Anybody else? Well, I want to thank you for coming in. I want to say that I love your playground. I'm gonna try that zip drive there and see if I don't land
It's
over at
waiting
the
for you.
church. But I know I'm coming. So, and it was easy to see with the kids there, how much they, not just the playground, but the staff and the building. I mean, that's their building, they're taking ownership, and that's their home. And that's one of the things I say is that helps you get the kids to school because they like being there and they feel welcome there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us right along to discussion item B2, Onika Elementary Update. Dr. K and Lori and Mosier.
Yeah, we'll just hand it off, Lori.
All right.
Let's jump right in.
Ready to go. All right, well, good evening, everyone. And thank you for letting me come and talk about Onika, one of my favorite topics of all time. So, yeah, it's true, I'm telling you. All right, so I just wanted to start, I love, all the photos that we always see online, and, like this highlights our new addition too, but just, can't understate enough, the fact that our students and families are our top priority. We're dedicated to providing them with that exceptional service and experiences to exceed their expectations. So, and I see it daily in my staff. They come here and they absolutely want to do this, and they show up and they work beyond, like when I was leaving today at like 4:45, there were still teachers working, when I left. I mean, that's how dedicated they are to our students. So tonight, I will go over this agenda. So just the overview of Onika again, and just giving you a review of our 2024 results, what I reported on in March of last spring, and then our fall preview of scores that we just received from our fall screeners, and then looking ahead at our goals for 25-26, and then what other things we have in store as far as like student experience and family enrichment. All right, so we are K-5, but we also do have pre-K and ECFE programming. So we have 6, Tim, right? 6 programs? 6 sections, yeah. Yep, 6 sections of pre-K, and they are incredibly adorable. And our 5th graders often love to help our little pre-K students around the building. We include them in anything that we do as far as assemblies or any other, events, in the evening. They are absolutely invited to come and attend, and they do. Right now, we have 457 students. We have 18% free and reduced lunch. We have about 29 students of color, which is up from last year. And then we have those 5 programming clusters in our building. So we have ESD, DCD, cross-categorical, cluster pathway program, and then a tier 2 program. And some of our programs are ASD, DCD, and our cluster pathway are district programs, so we have students that open enroll from other buildings to come to us for those. And then we have about 7% of our students that are multilingual. And we have one that is brand new to country, so is just learning English right now. So that's new for us. So that's an interesting conundrum, but our teachers are embracing it and using all resources available to help communicate with that student. So this is our mission and vision. So we're a tight-knit community. We advocate for student-focused, innovative education, embrace challenges, promote growth, ensure and empower lifelong learning, and a loving, compassionate, inviting environment. So we help our students be self-advocates and agents of their own learning. We respect diversity. We try to have our students understand their local and global impact. Social and emotional health and wellness are a top priority for our students as well, and how we do that in our classrooms with Second Step. And then we want to provide educational opportunities that are authentic, compelling, and relevant. So here are some photos of student engagement, or in family engagement and student experience that we've had over the past. So we have Wargo that we partner with, and they come to us and we go to them. So it's all environmental learning. So some of those pictures up in that top left-hand corner, right? Yeah. Are at Onika, actually. So just like in our backyard, the one in the very top is at Wargo. And then we have our Boosterthon fun run that we do every year. It's a PTA fundraiser. That's coming up again. It's the Glow Run, so the students are really excited about that. It's the day before Halloween, so that'll be interesting. And then students are coding, so Molly Lee, our media specialist, comes and helps our students do all kinds of things related to STEM. We are fortunate to have a lot of people that are engaged in art, so we do a lot with our art that we do throughout the year and try to have some kind of fun art party every year. And now we have a full-time art teacher that'll be there every day all year, so hopefully we'll see some really cool art exhibits. And then, of course, our bingo night, which will come again in November, which we always fill our gym, like we pack it in, and every year I plan for more tables and we always run out. Like the last 3 years in a row, like, all right, we need 90. And then we get there and it's like, okay, no, we're gonna need like 110. So this year I planned for 110, I'm probably gonna need 115, so. But it's a great event, everybody just loves to come out and just play bingo for an hour and a half. And then our family dinners, our intentional social interactions are fantastic to have community come in and just talk about students and talk about their needs and talk about what the family needs, how we can help support them, and how we can help make them feel a part of our community at Onika. And then we always have some really great, engaging assemblies that come into our building. I am reaching out to the Minnesota Twins and what they did at Otter last spring with their strikeout program with mental health. And so hopefully I'll hear back from them soon. We'll get them to come in as well. And then just having fun game nights, where the kids just come and play games and the families come with them, and then we have food trucks and everything else. And it's just a really great time. So just trying to find as many ways that we can to engage students in school and then have their families also feel like they are part of the community. All right, so, these are the football players. They came out to spend a day with our kids last year, and the students absolutely loved it. They could not wait. So this is one of the games that they played with the kids out at recess. So just playing football, and they came in and ate lunch with them too. It was great. And we're working with the basketball team to get them to come out again this fall and do the same kind of thing with our kids. And then I'll talk about that later, but we're also doing a high school mentorship program with some other students to do something with our 3rd through 5th graders. So last year, I talked about first grade. We focused on first grade and what was happening there, as it's a pivotal time in our students' development as far as literacy goes. So at the beginning of the year, last year, they were at 49% low risk, 51% some are high risk. By spring, we got that number to 71% low risk and 29% some or high risk. The high risk, so that 29% is including some and high, it's actually only 3 students were at high risk by this spring. So that was a fantastic result, and our teachers worked so hard to achieve that, and I'm so proud of them. And the one thing about early reading, and this is the fluency piece of it, and they got to 72%. And again, it was 2 students, possibly I think 2 or 3 students that were at high risk. But to highlight this is our first grade students start taking a reading, they read to someone to check their fluency. It's something they have never, ever done before. It's something sitting in front of a student and they have to read a passage to you. And that's something brand new for first graders. So for them to move from 55% to 72% and being more fluent readers was an incredible achievement, and I'm so proud of our first grade team. And not only there, I'm just highlighting first grade, but we saw results across the board, with all of our teachers. So I'm very proud of everyone in our building. So now I will go, into our fall screening and the results that we have coming up, and then it leads into what our goals are for the school year. So our kindergartners came in at 68% low risk for literacy in early reading and 86% low risk in math. And then our first graders came in at literacy at 52% low risk and 68% low risk in math. And then second grade, they take an additional reading assessment. So the A reading, that's the comprehensive, like overall of all reading. So it's testing all those skills, especially comprehension. So they came in at 55% in second grade. Their fluency, that's just reading a passage, at 56%. And then their math overall was 61%. So third grade, same thing. So 63% in comprehension, 62% in fluency, and then 74% in math. Our fourth graders are starting off comprehension-wise at 76% low risk. Their fluency is at 66% low risk, and then their A math, or their math overall, is 64. And then fifth graders are coming in at 62% low risk in reading, and their fluency is at 52%, and then their A math is at 64%. So we take the average of all of these scores to decide what our fall goals will be and what we want to achieve by the end of the school year for all of our students. So we have 3 goals, and I'll start with academic. So we are stretching to get to 80% of our K-1 students will be low risk on the fast early reading composite. So that's testing everything. So that's their phonics and phonemic awareness and letter sounds and all of those things that combine, to get them to start being readers. So we want 80% of them to be at low risk. And then our students in 2nd through 5th grade will be at 80%, the same thing for the CBMR reading. That's fluency. And then 80% of our students in 2nd through 5th grade will have that low risk in A reading, which is comprehension. So all of those fall screeners led to us wanting to have this stretch goal of 80% this year. So how are we going to do that? So we're really focusing on our instructional practices this year and all those tiers. So tier 1 is your universal, that's core instruction with your classroom teacher, receiving your literacy and math instruction. Your tier 2 is when we have our 30 minutes of literacy and 30 minutes of math in addition to core, where the students are getting what they need. And then our tier 3 is if we have high support needed for a certain small number of students that need to have a pull-out service to come and really focus in on specific skills that will get them to leave either low or high risk and get into, some in high risk to get to low risk. And then this year, we're starting data meetings. So we had our first one on September 11th already, and we went over all our fall screening results. And that's when teachers, we partnered with, it was myself and my instructional coach, and we had our CrossCat teacher, and our school psychologist, and our speech pathologist, and then our ML teacher, and intervention, I think I said that already, and then all of the teachers on the team. And we met to discuss all of our students' needs, and we looked at all of their scores, and we really decided, this is what we need to do for our students instructionally. Here's how we're going to do tier 1, here's how we're going to do tier 2, and here's how tier 3 will work. So we will do that 4 more times this year around critical, every 6 to 8 weeks of progress monitoring. So teachers will do some kind of intervention, within that tier 2 and in their tier 1 instruction, and then keep a really good record of how students are progressing, and then use that data to inform their instruction. And then we meet all together to talk about it, as a whole group to really decide what our students need to be successful. And then again, teams are doing that, that progress monitoring either weekly they decide or bi-weekly, so every 5 days or every 10 days to determine what our students need. So that'll be a big, piece of how we get to our 80% this year. So our student experience goal, we want at least 90% of our students to report that they feel valued, safe, engaged, and respected. And then for attendance, we want at least 90% of our students to maintain a 90% or higher attendance rate. I believe we're at 89 this spring. So I hope we can surpass that. So that's our goal. So then how we're going to achieve that, through those daily class meetings and really creating that culture and that community within our building, so that students do feel that way and they want to come to school every day. that gradual release of responsibility, like putting that, what we talked about earlier, that onus of, their advocacy and how they're agents of their own learning, that'll help there too. Teaching them skills for learning, that's our second step with social emotional. Making sure that we understand that empathy and kindness are a huge part of how we create that culture and that environment within our, classrooms and also our school. Helping with emotional management, problem solving, growth mindset, not yet. I can't do it yet. Goal setting, establishing safety and building connections. So that's a huge part of what we do daily. And then family engagement, we want to make sure we continue our PTA-sponsored events. Our community dinner and conversation is always a huge hit. And so we are planning that for probably later this spring. And then just having free family nights that we do ourselves, our bingo, an art fair. And then there has been rumors of a talent show. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I know the kids want it so badly. They've been asking for years. So we'll see if that happens. Just having meaningful conferences every time we meet with parents, be it the official conference dates or, through phone conversations or emails. And then consistent and timely communication, Parent Squares helped a lot with that. So, okay, looking ahead, so we have a group of high school students that reached out wanting to help support our 3rd through 5th grade students in our building. So they contacted me over the summer, and I know they're working with a few others, possibly, I think Birch Lake, Otter, and wanting to just meet with students. They can come between 8 and 9 in the morning, and then just be like a big sister, big brother, to some of our 3rd grade students. So my school psych and our social worker are taking that on, and hopefully, we can also work with the basketball team to make that just a huge piece of, continuing to build that community and that engagement. And I am hosting the Hugo Bus Tour this year. So that'll be fun to have everybody, start at Onika, and then I'll, do something like this again, tell them, how great Onika is. They probably already know that. And then we go on the bus tour and come back, and it's a great time. I don't know if you've ever been on it, but the city planner who does the tour talks the entire time, and he is so engaged and so he is so knowledgeable about everything Hugo. So it's a really great time. And then, of course, our Booster Fun Run is coming up right before Halloween, which is always fun. The kids, raise a lot of money for our PTA, and then our PTA uses those funds to help support our teachers and students throughout the school year. All right. So that is Onika in a nutshell.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Do we have any
Yes.
questions? Yes, Ms. Thomas.
I don't have a question, just a comment. Happy to see the Booster-thon is still going. I was on the PTA
Yes.
when we got that one
Yes.
to kind of take over for the color run because it had started to fizzle a little bit, and it was such a great event. And it doesn't matter what the weather is because you do it in
Right.
the gym.
Right.
So that's great. And if there's a talent show, I
Are
will
you
be
coming?
there.
All right. Awesome.
Because talent shows are so much fun, especially in elementary school. And
Yes.
I remember doing one at Lincoln when I was in Lincoln, and I can still remember what my friend and I did. And yeah, so that is really exciting to see, and just thank you for coming tonight.
Anytime. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Scar.
You mentioned meaningful parent-teacher conferences. Does the district provide the principals and the schools kind of like a playbook of this is how you conduct a meaningful parent-teacher meeting? Do we do that? So
No.
do you provide to the teachers kind of like here's what a good outcome is for a parent-teacher conference?
Right. We always talk about, the importance of, making sure that we're addressing the positives as well as, the challenges and the growth that the students need to make, and then how we do that, and it shouldn't ever be, we talk about this a lot, it shouldn't ever be a surprise when
Right.
when a parent comes to a conference, it's like, what, this is what's happening? That shouldn't ever happen. So it's the buildup, before then, and all that, connection that they're making with the family, in these first couple of weeks of school. And then throughout, after that, leading up until February or March, I think they're in March this year, and making sure that they understand that. And then having data present, is always a huge thing, to share, student work, you know, is important. And then just, you know, understanding that, you know, the parent is there because they love their child so much. And just, you know, like, they could ask you some really hard questions, and it's just because they just want to be there too and partner with us, you know, to make sure their child grows, you know. So just being there, you know, to support them and just saying, you know, like, just what else do you need from me to help you have a really, really successful conference?
So no surprises is a big deal.
Correct. It
Right.
is huge.
So I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah.
The other one is, what percentage of parent-teacher conferences are attended by the parents? Is it 100%? Is it 90%? Is
We
it
are-
80%?
We are darn close. I think last year, you know, most teachers came down and said 100% of my parents came, and if they didn't come, then they made a phone call or they reached out and tried a different way. You know, like did a virtual conference, you know, with a Google Meet. But the majority we're in the high 90s, I would say 98% of our parents always come to conferences.
Do we keep track of that on a district-wide basis?
No.
It seems to me that would be an important metric to see if parents, because one of the things I think is key to kids in school is parent involvement.
Absolutely.
So if the parents are involved, I think the student does better.
Mhm.
So it seems to me that would be an important metric, especially in elementary schools.
Yes.
The other thing I was thinking too, when I read this, on the academic goals, this is not really a question for you because I like how you laid this out. It's more for the district. I mean, do we have elementary education goals like was laid out here on slide 21? If you could go to slide 21. Do we,
This, like this one?
right.
Okay.
I mean, do we have expectations for the elementary schools that says, hey, we want 80% of K through 1 students to score low risk? Or does each,
Yes, we do. So 80% is our goal, and you'll see that some schools maybe need 2 years in order to reach that 80%, and some schools need 1 year. So yep, district-wide, we have that same goal. So you'll see that common goal throughout all the presentations this year.
okay, thank you. And the other one I was thinking about is the student experience goal, which is slide 22. So have we correlated the first goal there, which is 90% of the students feel like they're valued, safe, with the attendance rate? Are those directly correlated, or is there no correlation between those? And then I think it would be nice to do the percentage of parent-teacher and correlate that, and then correlate that back with academics and try to bring it all together. This is maybe not a question for you, but maybe a question for the district on how we could tie these. We have so much data.
Right.
We're like dying in data. We need to translate it into information and see if we can, you know, tie things together so we know where we have gaps. And I would think that we would want to do something like that.
Yeah, and we can have, I mean, knowing of what conferences are, I can absolutely do that. That's, you know, pretty easy to do, and we can do that this fall and in the spring. And then knowing, you know, like what results we get from, you know, our student survey, because we'll figure that out, you know, through our student survey, and then through our SEL screener, which is the Sabres that we're using this year to see where that is. So we can absolutely, you know, that's something that, you know, we can do, you know, as a building for sure, you know, and see if there is some kind of correlation. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to do that on a district-wide basis to see if all those things tie together and tell a story. And maybe they don't, but my intuition is that they do.
For some students, it may, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms.
Yeah.
Thompson?
I guess this really isn't a question, just a comment to what Mr. Scar is discussing over here. And I would just say that we would probably find a correlation, because if we look at Onika's free and reduced lunch rate, it's 18.36%. Now, if we go back and we look at Birch, was it at 53% are at free and reduced lunch. And 31% of Birch has special services, and 15% multilingual learners, and 1% of a homeless population that we are aware of, that we know of. So those families are gonna struggle. Those families are gonna have a harder time coming to conferences. Those families are working shifts where they're probably working multiple jobs, they're not home. Maybe the kids are being raised by their grandparents. Maybe when we look at Birch's attendance rate and we see that, I believe it was 5th grade, other than kindergarten, has a higher rate in the yellow for some risk of attendance. And my assumption, and this is assumption as someone who works in child protection and deals with a lot of these families, is those kids might be home taking care of other siblings, or even the family member who is the adult that cares for them. Because if it's a grandma or there's somebody else in the home that needs care, the kids are the ones who do that work. And so while I'm not sure what we would do with that data if we got it, because we do everything we can to support those families, and I don't know how else we could support them to be here for those things. So, I mean, those are things we have to consider and look at when we're looking at our numbers. And Birch has the program, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been a while since I've been in all the elementary schools. But Birch has the room where we have kids in there who have very high needs, who don't go into the regular classroom they're in that room with their physical therapists and their special support people, and maybe they go to the art room or they might participate in music class, but they're not sitting in the classroom with an educator all day long. They're in that special space that we have, which is absolutely amazing. If you haven't been there, Mr. Scar, or anybody, I would recommend going and seeing it, because it really is great work that we have that in the building. But that's, I mean, asking for those numbers, the data shows it. It shows where the attendance things are, and it shows where Onika is gonna have a little less in the attendance area, probably because those families are a little more affluent in our community than other schools that have higher poverty in our student body population.
Okay. Chair, I'd like to respond to that.
Okay, Mr. Scar.
I've heard all of those rationalizations, and I think we have a lot of resources for interventions, and our job is to prepare our kids for the future no matter what their circumstances are. And that's our job here. And academics matter, attendance matters, and we have the money that we have spent through our levies and through our budget to make that happen, to get those. And I know sometimes you can't bring a horse, to water, but we have the tools to improve that, and we should look at that. So I think tying those numbers together is important, and it would be important to share it with the public so they see the importance of that information and how it correlates and why this is important. Thank you.
Ms.
I
Daniels.
just think we're using our tools very well, and we're using our staff very well, and we're using our resources very well. And I can vouch that the teachers, educators, support staff working very hard to make all of that happen. And so, and I think if you've been in education for a while, you know that attendance and feeling safe and valued and parents feeling welcome are all tied together. We know that. It's not anything new. So I just appreciate everything you and your staff have done, and the other educators here. So
Yeah, they're the best around, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Thompson, I'll look forward to you coming to the talent show.
One thing I do
Yes,
want to say is, looking just at the parent-teacher conferences, I think you need, that's just a few time slots, but there's so much more contact with the family. And I think all that should be, if you're gonna look at it, should be considered, because there's so many times that the teacher can reach out and talk to those families, whether, many different ways. Because one of the things I heard you say is, when we get to conferences, it shouldn't be a surprise. And that tells me there's other points of contact. You cannot just do it at parent-teacher conference. You have to make contacts, continually update some different ways to reach out to our students and our parents and our communities. So, and I know you do, so I just want to thank you for everything you do, and I Keep up the good work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. We're on to operational item C1, certification for the 2025 payable 2026 preliminary property tax levy.
Good evening. This is the time of our budget year when we come to you with our preliminary property tax levy. Our property taxes make up about 20 to 25% of our general fund, so it's an important funding stream for the school district. As a school district, we're working with the Department of Education and providing information between August and throughout September to make sure that all of our levy amounts are accurate. We have to ask the school board to approve an amount, and at this point, we typically ask that you approve the maximum amount of preliminary property tax levy. That allows us to continue to work with the Department of Education and make refinements as they are necessary. So included in your packet today is a preliminary estimate of our taxes for next school year. So this is money that would be levied against taxpayers in 2026, and then it'll be revenue to us in the 26-27 school year. You can see that in total, it's about a 4.4% increase in total revenue over the 26 school year. And then on the back of the document that's included in the packet, it shows that on the average taxpayer, it's about flat. The increase is about flat if you have, if the estimated market value of your property hasn't changed. We'll continue to work with the Department of Ed. There are a couple of estimates that are not yet on the official document from the Department of Ed, but are included in here. And so we need to make sure that that gets reflected appropriately. The next step of the process is the school board would approve the proposed preliminary levy at the maximum amount. And then in December, we would come forward in the truth and taxation hearing, and we'd have all of those final numbers and analysis at that time. Any questions?
Questions? Yes.
Ms. Johnson, I just want to clarify. So you said 20 to 25% of our budget is property taxes, and
Yeah.
that's how schools are funded.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
this is not something that's unique to White Bear Lake.
Right.
It's all over the country that it's property taxes, right? And so when you say it's a 4.4% increase,
Mhm.
but for the average property owner, it goes down,
Mm-hmm.
help me
Yeah.
understand how that works.
Correct. So the total revenue that we're going to be receiving is going to go up by about 4%, but there's a higher amount of property in the school district. So that might come from new assessed values, but it also comes from new construction
Building
and
in
businesses
Hugo
coming
and-
in. Yep, and so that's spread over the entire property taxes or the property value, and so that's where it results in that almost flat, slight decrease for the average home.
Okay, and so then the maximum levy is set by the Minnesota Department of Education,
Yes.
right? And how do
Yeah.
they come up with that number?
It's super complicated.
Yeah, it's like the most
like a-
complicated
It is.
formula in the country for school districts, I think, right?
Well, I don't know that. I would certainly assume so because it's a 39-page document with 3 columns of calculations. And so we provide inputs like this is what we think the enrollment is going to be for next school year. And then they run through all of these calculations. We verify all of them to make sure that they're coming through in the way that I would expect them to. And then they true it up as well. So we provide the estimates, then they get the actual student counts, and then they provide adjustments. And so it's, there's just a lot of facets to the levy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Scar?
Thank you. How many times have we not asked for the maximum levy?
I'm not aware of any time not
So we
asking for
always
the-
ask for the maximum levy.
At this point,
How
yes.
many times have we actually not used the maximum levy when we've done it something less than the maximum levy?
Well, when we approve the maximum, then what the Department of Education is going to do is they're going to finalize all of their calculations, and then they're just going to go ahead and use that amount. If we weren't going to approve the maximum, we would reduce it by a dollar amount, and then they would take that dollar amount and reduce all of their calculations by that dollar amount. if that makes sense.
So what would happen if we didn't ask for the maximum levy? Like if we asked for, do they have a minimum levy?
No, there's many different facets to the levy. There's the referendum that the voters approve, but there's a local optional funding stream. Our long-term facility maintenance flows through there, our safe schools. So you would have to identify like which facet of the levy you'd want to change, and then work with the Department of Education to change that.
But isn't this levy is all-inclusive that you
Correct.
just showed?
Yep, but
Okay.
I'm just saying there's the multiple
No, I
facets
get,
of it.
I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah.
So, but the question is, if we ask for the maximum levy, the state would come, let's use last year.
Mhm.
We asked for the maximum levy, which was whatever it was.
Yeah.
4%, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it was last
Yep,
year.
yeah.
So it was 4%. When the state puts our numbers through its calculation,
Mhm.
however it's done,
Mhm.
and it comes out to be, what, 4%? Or is it something less, or is
Yeah.
it something more?
It's a little bit different than that. So actually, we have a really great example this school year for why we're asking to approve the maximum. We work with Northeast Metro 916. We all know that. They have property that they have leases on that all of their member districts levy their taxpayers to help pay for those leases. And our portion of that lease cost related to Northeast Metro 916 is not yet approved in our levy. MDE is still working on that approval process. And so I have an estimate in here to give you what I think the total dollar amount is gonna be for our school district, but it's not actually like a finalized number yet. And so we ask that you approve the maximum so that when MDE has those approvals completed, which will be done by September 30th, then we're able to go ahead and bring that forward and send it to the county. So if you set a dollar amount, then the risk would be that 916's calculations were such that it wasn't enough to cover our expense, our total expense, and that would just be a general fund expense at that point. Does that make sense?
So the 68 million that is in this right now,
Mhm.
would the state come back? What's our thinking on what the state would come back at?
Well, I think this is very close. Like I said, I just
Okay.
don't know yet those final 916 numbers. And when I reached out last week to ask them if they knew, they just hadn't had that completed yet.
Does every school district in the state of Minnesota always ask for the maximum levy?
I don't know that for certain, but
You
I
know
would sure
that?
expect the
I
vast
would
majority.
guess that's
to.
probably true. Is that right?
Probably true.
Yeah.
I have not ever seen a district not do the max at this point in the process.
Because it gives you
And
more
then-
flexibility.
Yeah, it gives you flexibility, and districts might work at truing up enrollment figures from the prior year, for example, and so all that gets factored into the calculation. And ultimately, in December, you'll be approving a dollar amount. That's when the dollar amount is approved. If we were to approve a dollar amount tonight, we couldn't change that. So you do it in December. The board approves a dollar amount in December.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I just have a real easy question for you. You talked in there about if the value of my house goes up, my taxes may go up.
Correct.
What controls do we have here in this room on the evaluation of our homes?
None. That's done by the county.
So we don't control anything, the county takes care of that. We don't ask them to go to White Bear and raise all the rates.
We don't, no.
Okay. This is really clear, because sometimes people think we're out there, and then I just wanted to make sure that people knew that that's a county issue, that's not something we can control.
Correct.
Okay, so we have before us the recommended action before us is to approve the maximum for the 2025 payable 2026 proposed preliminary property tax levy. Can I get a motion for that recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, by Ellison, a second.
Second.
Second by Thompson. Any further discussion? Okay, I believe this will be a roll call vote, so I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Scar,
Yes.
Arcan,
Aye.
Daniels, aye, Ellison,
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. I believe we have reached the adjournment. Before I adjourn, I just want to check in. Wednesday, is that Central Middle School's open house?
Yep.
Can you just want to?
4:30.
4:30, so I encourage everybody to go and see all the great things they've done. So with that, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Ms. Ellison, is there a second?
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you for a great meeting. We are now adjourned.